Hey, it's Jess. Welcome back. Today I'm here with my May wrap up where I will be talking about all the books that I read in May of 2024. Looking at my story graph, I read a total of 12 books, which equals out to be 3,848 pages. So, very, very good month for me. Part of it was because some of the books were shorter, but overall, great month. If you look at the genres or the moods, not surprising, it's dark, mysterious, thrilling. Those are usually the moods that I end up reading most of. What did surprise me is when you look at the genres this month, my most read genre was LGBTQIA+. I do read a lot of those books, but I didn't quite realize that so many of my books were in that genre this month. And then it was romance and then horror. So still had to get that horror up there because, again, that's what I read most of, but I was a little surprised with the shakeup this month in genre. Looking at the format, 42% of the books I read were physical books, 33% were audiobooks, and 25% were digital books. Looking at my star ratings, I had an average of 4.13 stars. I had 1 3-star book, 7 4-star books, 3 4.5-star books, and 1 5-star book. The 1 3-star book I read was Mapping the Interior by Stephen Graham Jones. And it's a short novella. It's a little over 100 pages. It is about a boy named Junior. He's 12, and you are following him. He and his mother and little brother live in a trailer home. And one night, he is sleepwalking, and he wakes up and thinks that he sees his dad's ghost. And so then he spends the book mapping the interior of his home. That's what mapping the interior is. Trying to see like where else he can see his dad's ghost, how else he can get his dad's ghost to appear again. He's trying to get his dad back. His dad died in a horrible car accident a few years earlier. Again, I liked this book, but it was just kind of average. I don't think I'll read it again. For being such a short book, it surprisingly took me a long time to get through, and that's just not typical for me. But yeah, it took me a while to get through, and it wasn't very memorable to me. So I'm glad I read it. I got it off of it was one of my books I own that haven't read. So I'm glad I got it off of that list and shelf, but I probably won't think about it again. And speaking of books that I own, like from my TBR jar, the slips of paper, I got this little thing. I think it used to be a candle probably, but I'm going to start putting these pieces of paper from my TBR jar. I'm going to put them in here so we can see like how much I can actually read of the books that I'm supposed to be reading each month. So I put it in there. I also have Spy Family Volume 1. I read that earlier this year off my physical TBR, and Too Late by Colleen Hoover, which I unfortunately also read earlier this year. But now it can go in the jar and I don't have to think about it ever again. The first 4-star book I read in May was Dawn by Octavia E. Butler. This book, I had started it in April for the April Buzzword Readathon for Books and Lala. The prompt was Nature Words. And I had started it then, but didn't have a chance to finish it. And so I finished it in May. In this book, it is the beginning of a trilogy. This trilogy has 2 different names. It's either called Lilith's Brood or it's also called the Xenogenesis series. In this book, you are following Lilith, this is like hundreds of years after there was a huge war on Earth, and humans have been put into like cryosleep, and she gets woken up. And this happens several times where she gets woken up, she asks questions, she gets put back to sleep. She gets woken up, same thing happens. Well, one time when she wakes up, there is a creature in her room with her who she finds out is an alien. And she gets like She gets assimilated into this alien family. There's like 3 or 4 of them, and they all have different roles, and now she's part of this alien family. And she lives with them for a while, learning their customs, learning about what's happened with humanity and the human race, and learning about this alien species. And then she finds out that she has been chosen to kind of lead the recolonization of Earth. And so she is in charge of picking and awakening more humans that they then like band together for a trial on the ship. And they're going to be the ones that get sent down to Earth first to like recolonize and repopulate. I liked this book. I love Octavia Butler's writing. It's wonderful. This was written in 1987, and you just the way that it talks about systems and issues that we still have today in 2024, but this was written, 30 years ago. It's just amazing. She was a wonderful author, very insightful. I love her writing. It's so descriptive, very immersive. I could, see everything that Lilith was seeing. I was there with her, with these aliens, and I really enjoyed that, and I look forward to reading the other 2 in this series. This is another book that was on my physical TBR that I read, and so I can add this one to the jar too. So, plop, there we go. Yay! So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4 books in there. I can count. The next 4-star book I read was Queen of Teeth by Hailey Piper. I listened to this as an audiobook. In this book, you are following Yolanda, who goes by the nickname Yaya, and she is a blue-collar worker. She's kind of just listless with her life. She doesn't have a partner. She goes out clubbing and dancing a lot. And one day she wakes up and discovers that she has teeth down there in her lady bits. And then things happen after that. Because then things happen after that. This was such a weird book. It was so fun to listen to, though. And it was actually it kind of goes, this whole world is crazy, where you find out there's some people that have different genetics in them, so they're not technically human. And then you're following a doctor who works for this company that's in charge of controlling and keeping track of, they're called Chimera, the other genetic mutated people. Anyway, it was a wild ride, and it had a wonderful ending. It was unlike anything I'd ever read. I'm so glad I got to listen to it. I had first heard about it from Jordaline Reads here on YouTube, and I want to thank her for the recommendation. She didn't recommend it straight to me, but she talked about it, and then I was like, hey, I've heard of that book. I want to pick it up and check it out, and I'm so glad that I did. The next 4-star book I read was Every Heart a Doorway by Shauna Maguire. And this is the first book in the Wayward Children series. I listened to this one as an audiobook. It was about 4.5 hours long, so not too long, a short little novella. Really, really good. I picked this book up because Books and Lala here on YouTube has the buzzword readathon, and her prompt for May was a book with the word every in the title. And so I chose Every Heart a Doorway. I have been wanting to read this series for a long time, and I just never had picked it up. I'm so glad that I did. It was very good. I can't wait to read more in this series. The premise of this book is this is a world where doors open up to other worlds. And you're following Nancy, who has gone to another world and come back, and her parents basically can't accept that she's changed, and she can't accept the fact that she's back. She keeps wanting to go to her world again, her other world. And so she is put in this school full of other children who have gone to other worlds and come back and are having a hard time living in our world again. And then students at the school start dying. And so she's trying to figure out why they're dying, who's killing them, because she doesn't want to get killed. Can't blame her there. Anyway, I love Shauna McGuire's writing. This is the second book of hers that I've read like under the name Shauna McGuire. She also writes horror books under the pen name Mira Grant, and I've read almost all of those books. Those are also wonderful books. In fact, I talked about one in one of my first Way Back Wednesdays. Not one of the first. Anyway, I've talked about some of her horror books before, but I really enjoyed this one. I'm looking forward to reading more of the series, and I just can't wait to see what else these books have in store for me. The next 4-star book I read was Scarred by Emily McIntyre. This is the second book in her Never After series, which are a series of fractured fairy tales. And this book is very, very, very loosely based on The Lion King. In this book, you are following Sarah, who is engaged to the oldest brother in the Fossa family. His name is Michael, so it's like Mufasa, and Sarah is Sarabi. But there is unrest and upset in the kingdom. This is like a fantasy. Her other book, Hooked, was set in like current times. This one's like a fantasy world, obviously, because there's a king. Anyway, the king's brother, Prince Tristan, is called the Scarred King, and everyone is afraid of him and doesn't like him, and he's just a grumpy old man, but he's not old, he's just grumpy. And so Sarah is there to kind of bring peace and an alliance between her kingdom. She's not a princess. Her dad's like, I don't know, a duke or something like that. So I can't remember. And then she's marrying into this other kingdom because they're going to like give her country protection or something like that. And then like, you know, there's Timothy and Paul and Xander, who's Zazu. Anyway, it's a lot of the characters that have like the same first letter or sound in their names that go with the Lion King. Basically, Sarah falls in love with Tristan. Tristan falls in love with her. Tristan's scarred. That's why he's a scarred prince. It is a spicy book. All of these books are spicy books. Well, not all of the books I'm talking about right now. Like all of the books in the Never After series are all spicy books. It was a slow burn. The spice was not there for a while. The spice was pretty good once it got there, but it took a while to get there. It was definitely not even an enemies to lovers, but it was just like they didn't even talk to each other for so long, and then they're madly in love because that's how these books are written. So overall, I liked it better than I liked Hooked. I probably won't read it again, but it was a fun time. I read it pretty quickly, and it was part of the fun for me is figuring out, which is silly, but like part of the fun for me is figuring out, oh, which character is this supposed to be? What's their name start with? What character are they supposed to be in this story? Which, when you think about it, is weird because then it's just like a spicy Lion King with humans. But I don't know what that says about me. But anyway, I enjoyed this book, and I can't wait to read the next one, honestly. The next one is a Wizard of Oz retelling, so we'll see what that one's about. The next 4-star book is You Can Trust Me by Wendy Hurd. I picked this book I picked it from the TBR jar, which is right here. It's on my list of books that I want to read, and so that was the one that I have to pick out. One of them. And this was like a mystery thriller. You are following Summer and Leo, who are best friends, and basically they're con artists. And you find out about their like background, what led them to live in that van life and con men. But one day, Leo goes after this like really famous, really rich, he's like an IT guy or something, app developer. I can't remember. Anyway, he's like a computer guy named Michael. And then, so she goes on a date with him and disappears. And Summer's like, what? And so she's trying to find Leo because, she is worried about her friend. And the police are like, well, how do you know that she didn't just leave you? And Summer's been having these thoughts of, is Leo getting tired of me? She doesn't like, our life together. And then she disappears. So she's like, well, Leo just up and left. It finally happened. She got sick of me. But then she's like, no, Leo wouldn't do that. So then Summer is trying to find her. And they go, she gets invited to this island retreat by one of Michael's coworkers or a guy that works under him or something. So a lot of it takes place on this remote island. And it was really good. I listened to this as an audiobook and while I was reading the physical book too. It was so interesting. And again, very descriptive. I loved the thought and how it was all connected. I really enjoyed this one. Probably one of the best thrillers that I've read in a while. And I didn't know what was going to happen, and I wanted to keep reading to find it out. So I'm glad that I got this one. And this is another book that I pulled out of the TBR jar, so I can put it in my red jar. So there we go. Yay! The next 4-star book I read was The Only One Left by Riley Sager. And this book took me I had it for 2 or 3 months from the library before I actually sat down and read it. And now that I read it, I'm sad that it took me so long. I really liked it. I have only read 2 other Riley Sager books before this. I read Home Before Dark, which I loved, and I read Lock Every Door, which I did not love and didn't even really enjoy. So I was a little hesitant about this one because, with my track record, it could have gone either way. Happy to say that I did really enjoy this one. In this book, you are following Kit, who is a home health care worker who has been assigned a job to take care of a woman named Lenora Hope. And Kit does not want to take this job because in her town, there is an urban legend that Lenora Hope killed her entire family back in 1929. This is set in the 80s, by the way. And so she's like, I don't want to work for this serial killer who killed her whole family. But for reasons that are explained, she doesn't have a choice. She has to go. And so she gets to this house. It's super old. It's this giant mansion on the side of a cliff. And there's cracks in the walls because, the cliff's trying to fall into the ocean. And so it's Lenora and Kit. There's also I don't know what to call her. Not a house mother, but a lady of the house who takes care of the house named Miss Baker. And then there's a maid. I think her name was Jessie. And then there's a groundskeeper named Carter. So it's just them in this big house. And Kit feels connected to Lenora and finds out Lenora is completely paralyzed, except she can use her right arm. That's it. And Kit finds out that Lenora can use a typewriter. And so then Lenora says, I want to tell you what really happened that night in 1929. I want to tell you my story. And so then obviously hijinks ensue because it's a Riley Sager book. Riley Sager loves to put 1,000 twists into his books. I kind of guessed some of them. Some of them were completely out of left field, and I was like, that was really unnecessary. I don't really understand why we had to go that way with it. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I read it really quickly. The beginning, when you first get to the house, the manor, is just so creepy and gothic, and I loved the atmosphere of the book. I liked the characterization. Again, wasn't super happy with the ending, figured out some of the twists, but overall, a really good time. My last 4-star book for May was Bride by Ali Hazelwood. This is a book it's part of the Omegaverse. It's what I would call paranormal romance. But apparently now we call it the Omegaverse. I have read 3 of Ali Hazelwood's other book, The Love Hypothesis, Love on the Brain, and Love Theoretically. That's the last one. I liked those okay. Those are about like women in STEM and like romances where the women are in STEM. Bride is about Misery Lark, who is a vampire, and she is basically in an arranged marriage with the alpha of the werewolf pack, the local one. His name is Lo Moreland. And they're trying to like create alliances between the weres and the vampires. And so she has to go to the were territory, and she marries Lo. Obviously, that's weird because the weres and the vampires and the humans all kind of hate each other. And I guess you learn about how like this used to be, arranged marriages used to be a thing between the weres and the vampires, but there was one big event, like, I don't know, a long time ago, where the were husband, I think it was the husband, maybe it was the bride. Anyway, where the were in the marriage, in the wedding, like formed a coup and they all attacked the vampires and there was a lot of bloodshed. And so ever since then, the weres and the vampires have hated each other. I don't know. It was a fun book. It was a fast read for me. Another spicy book. Definitely had some spicy scenes. It's not going to be for everyone. Parts of it were weird. Parts of it, like, during the last part when it got really spicy, I read a lot of spice books. And I just really have trouble with the dialogue in a lot of these books, especially with the men. They just like turn into these, I don't know, wordless beasts who just like can only speak in one word answers. And I don't know. I just really hate the dialogue of most of those scenes. And definitely kind of felt like that during this. Obviously, I knew there was going to be some kind of like division between Misery and Lo, something that was going to like drive them apart. And it's almost always like a miscommunication or something like that. You know the tropes in those romance books, but I don't know, I was reading this and then when it happened, I was like, Lo, you are such a jerk. I was so mad about it. I really felt for Misery. And it was just a fun book. It's all written from her point of view. And I don't know, I'd be interested to see what other books Ali Hazelwood can write like in the Omegaverse. This isn't my normal kind of thing, but I got it from the library and now I've read it and I can't wait to see what else she comes out with this in this world. I can't wait to see what else she comes out with in this world. My first 4.5 star book was Don't Let the Forest In by C.G. Drews. I read this as an ebook. I received an advanced reader copy, also known as an ARC, from NetGalley. And this is a young adult horror book where you are following Andrew, and he and his twin sister Dove go to a boarding school where their best friend Thomas also attends. You are meeting, like, the story takes place at the beginning of the new school year, and you find out that Dove and Thomas had a huge fight at the end of the last school year, and now they won't talk to each other. And so Andrew is feeling very lost because he, feels a connection to his twin sister, but he also is very close with Thomas. They're best friends, they're roommates, and he feels the divide between them, and he doesn't know where to, like, which one. He ends up latching onto Thomas and kind of like pushing Dove aside. And in this book, you find out that there are monsters in the forest outside of the school, and Thomas has been fighting them. And then Andrew also starts helping him fight these monsters because they don't want anyone to die because these monsters kill them. For being a young adult horror book, this had some really graphic scenes in it. Definitely very descriptive, kind of creepy. As some of the monsters, when they were describing them, I was like, I would be terrified if I saw that in the forest at night. I'd probably be terrified in the forest at night, even if there weren't monsters there. But if I ran into some of these things, I don't know what I'd do. I'd probably pass out because I'd be so scared. But anyway, I really enjoyed it. It was not super long, read really quickly, and I loved the writing style. I can't wait to see what else this author has written. I don't know if they have written anything else, but I definitely would like to check it out. My next 4.5 star book is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This is another book that I picked up because I had picked it from the TBR jar on my list of books that I want to read. This is a book where you follow Vanessa, who is a 15-year-old girl going to a boarding school, and she falls in love with her 42-year-old teacher, Jacob Strain. And so the beginning of the book is you like flip between two timelines. So you flip between 2017, which is like the current timeline, and then you read about 2000 to I think 2007, which is when Vanessa first like meets Strain and they start their affair. And this book was really good. It was so hard to read. It is definitely like about a gross, creepy old man who is 100% grooming and manipulating and preying on this girl, this young girl, and completely messes up her entire life. It messes with her brain. It's an example of grooming gone right. I mean, for the guy, it's right. That's not what you ever want grooming to turn into. Like, you don't ever want grooming, but you definitely don't want it to like happen. Anyway, I liked this book. Again, hard to read, hard to just like listen to all the gaslighting and the manipulation and Jacob Strain. I don't like that man, which you're not supposed to. That's the whole point. I'm so glad I read this book. It was, it was something. I'm glad I read it. I don't know if I'd read it again anytime soon because it was so difficult and heartbreaking, but wonderful, wonderful literature. And as difficult as it was to read, I highly recommend it. And that's another piece of paper that we can put in my red jar. So there we go. So it's not super full, but it's getting there. Hooray. The last 4.5 star book I read was Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. And this book and this book series has blown up on Book Talk. I've seen it all over BookTube. So I didn't think I was going to read it because I didn't think it was something that I'd really be interested in. But boy, I picked it up and I read it in like 3 days. I have a individual review of this book, and in that I said I took it to my son's basketball game. So like during the warm-ups and during halftime, I could read this book because I wanted to know what was going to happen in this book. So you are following Magnolia and BJ. They are rich socialites in London, and it's their group of friends. And BJ and Magnolia used to be together. They have known each other since they were children. They've fallen in love. They were boyfriend and girlfriend. And then something happens and they break up. This book takes place like 2.5, 3 years after their breakup. But to the world, they are not broken up because they are still hanging around each other all the time. They spend the night at each other's houses all the time. They act like they're together, but they're not. And this is the most toxic relationship. And I ate it up. It's toxic in that BJ will get mad at Magnolia. So he'll go sleep with some random girl. So then Magnolia gets mad at him and she goes and dates some random guy. And then BJ gets mad because of that and sleeps with another girl, back and forth like that. Because they obviously still love each other and care about each other. Magnolia just, they obviously are meant to be. I didn't give this 5 stars because it got a little bit repetitive. I wasn't super happy with the ending. So that's why it wasn't a 5 star for me. But I'm interested enough that I have the second book, Daisy Hates. She's another character that was in this book. I have that one. I've already started it because I can't get enough of this world. I want to know what's going to happen between these characters, and surprising. I loved it way more than I thought I was going to. The one and only 5-star book I had for May was The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This is one of my favorite books. This is a reread for me. I actually listened to it on audio. The sequel to this book, Somewhere Beyond the Sea, is coming out in September, and I haven't read this one for a few years, and so I wanted to read it again in anticipation of the sequel coming out later this year. I adore this book. In it, you are following Linus Baker, who is like a caseworker for a company that goes and does audits for orphanages for magical children. And one day he is called in by extreme upper management and given a case that's like super confidential and told that he has to go to this orphanage that and audit and like make sure that it's safe for the children, that it's safe for the surrounding area, that the children are being taken care of and everything like that. But it's like some of the most dangerous children that are out there. And so Linus is like, I mean, I don't really want to do this because he's kind of a scaredy cat, but he packs up his stuff, he goes to the island, he meets these children whom I adore. I've talked about this. I also have a standalone review of this book, but Chauncey is one of my favorite characters of all time. I adore that child. If he was real, I would adopt him right away because he just brings a smile to my face and makes my heart so happy. I love him. And then you also have, other characters. You find Arthur Parnassus is the caretaker of the children. And this book, it's like a fantasy book, but it's really about, like learning that you don't have to be what society thinks you are. You can be you and be proud of who you are and don't worry about what other people think of you, and don't let their expectations and their ideas and images of you don't fall into those, and find your own way and be proud and be happy. And I don't know, the audiobook, not great. If you're going to read this and you haven't before, I highly recommend reading the book, not listening to it, because if I hadn't already read this book, I don't think I would have made it through just listening to the audio. I did not like the audiobook. But again, because I knew the story, it was okay. No, it wasn't. I wouldn't listen to the audiobook again. Just read the book. But I highly recommend you read the book because it's adorable and lovely, and I gave it 5 stars last time I read it. I gave it 5 stars this time. I think I will always give it 5 stars. I adore this book. Don't know how else to say that. Those are the 12 books that I read in May of 2024. I had a pretty good reading month. Lots of 4-star books, and that's okay, Still looking for another 5-star that isn't a reread. Maybe that will come in June. I've started a couple books so far, and I can't wait to see what next month is going to be like. I want to know, have you read any of these books? What did you think? All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye.